Welcome to today's Explainer. I want you to think of me as your impassioned music historian today, because we are stepping into a literal masterclass on a year that completely reshaped the sonic landscape of the world. The year is 1978. It was an unforgettable 12 months where a handful of tracks didn't just climb the charts, they changed music history forever. We're going to examine the records that stopped people cold, the ones that carried buried stories, and the ones that laid the absolute foundation for genres we listen to today without even realizing it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Reggae music was on fire. The world was finally listening. I want you to picture that documentary scene in your mind. Artists pouring absolutely everything they had into every single song, knowing the microphone was finally turned on for them globally. But here's what might surprise you. Even if you think you know these songs, at least 3 of these massive hits have incredible, complex details buried just beneath the surface. So this isn't just a nostalgic look back, it's a deep excavation. So, here is our syllabus for today. We'll be exploring dub studios versus pop rules, Jamaican roots and rhythm, British lovers rock, voices of defiance, and finally, reggae's global anthem. Think of these tracks as our historical documents for the class. As you'll see, the overarching genre of reggae wasn't just one monolithic sound, right? It was fragmented into distinct subgenres, and each one carried totally unique messages and stylistic approaches. From the instrumental depth of dub to the spiritual urgency of roots, all the way to the melodic pop-infused high vocals of lovers rock, each style gave a totally different segment of the population a voice.
All right, Section 1, Dub Studios versus Pop Rules, the Technical Laboratory of 1978.
Close your eyes for just a second. I want you to picture this exact atmosphere. A room, pitch black, illuminated only by the warm glow of studio equipment. Reels are turning slowly. You've got a man at a mixing desk making decisions that no music school on earth had ever taught him. This is the world that Augustus Pablo and King Tubby, also known as Osborne Reichik, operated in. They were creating pure magic out of thin air, literally doing things that had never been done before.
Now what's really interesting is the stark contrast between these two worlds. In traditional pop, you followed the conventional rules. You set up a microphone, recorded the standardized format, and well, that was it. But the dub producer? Man, they were transforming recordings in real time. They were dropping instruments in and out of the mix, pushing heavy echo and reverb to the absolute limit. Dub wasn't background music. It actively asked the listener to slow down and feel the empty space between the notes.
And this right here, this is the birth of the remix. King Tubby essentially invented this art form way before the modern word remix even meant what it means to us today. By manipulating audio live at the mixing desk, he turned existing songs into completely new, expansive experiences. This incredibly innovative technique shaped electronic pop and ambient music decades before those genres even had official names.
And working right alongside him was Augustus Pablo. Just look at what he pulled off. He took a melodica, an instrument most people associated with simple kids' music lessons, and he transformed it into one of the most emotionally powerful, sacred-sounding tools in Jamaican music. Pablo had a sound in his head that no one had mapped out before. And what's even more remarkable is his independence. He released King Tubby Meets Rockers Uptown on his very own Rockers International label.
Moving on to Section 2, Jamaican Roots and Rhythm, documenting the reality of the yard.
Let me paint you a picture. Imagine Kingston, Jamaica. You've got crowded yards, shared by too many families, zinc fences, the rich smells of cooking, kids running around, and music coming from absolutely every direction. And right in the middle of it all is Jacob Miller, singing Tenement Yard. He had this massive, joyful voice that documented both the hardship and the unstoppable momentum of his community. Tragically, his life was cut short in a car accident in 1980 at just 27 years old, right as he and the band Inner Circle were building incredible international momentum.
That everyday reality of the yard also extended into this deep spiritual urgency. Let's look at 2 deep roots case studies. First up, Burning Spear's Marcus Garvey. This wasn't just a song, it was a deliberate act of cultural rehabilitation for the Pan-Africanist hero. It pushed back against mainstream suppression to make listeners remember their history, re-recorded for Island Records with a slow, deliberate movement. Then we have Cultures Internationally, sung by the relentlessly consistent Joseph Hill. Coming off their massive hit, 2/7's Clash, they connected local Jamaican struggles directly with the global fight for human dignity. They sang with a prophetic clarity, like they knew where the world was heading before anyone else did.
Next up, Section 3, British lovers rock, a pop sensibility born in the UK.
Let's put these styles side by side to really hit our class objective. So, Jamaican roots rhythms were heavy, addressing themes of survival and hardship. But British lovers rock? That was born in the front rooms and community centers of Black British life. It featured these high, crystal-clear vocals and perfectly blended reggae with a mainstream pop sensibility. It was a monumental shift because it gave an entire generation of young Black British women a sound that was uniquely, entirely their own.
A perfect example of this is John K's Silly Games, produced by Dennis Bavell. Picture a record shop in Brixton back in 1978. This track comes on and the whole shop just goes quiet. Not because it's loud, but because it's just so incredibly beautiful. Her voice was like fragile, strong crystal. And here's a fantastic fun fact for you. Bavell managed the nearly impossible task of producing a track that satisfied both the mainstream pop charts, reaching the top 5, and the authentic sound system dances. That is a tightrope walk very few producers ever survive.
Okay, Section 4. Voices of Defiance, Confronting the Industry and Society.
Let's carefully unpack a buried trajectory here. We have Althea and Donna, who are literally teenagers at the time, recording Uptown Top Ranking on a Joe Gibbs and Errol Thompson rhythm. This joyful, totally self-possessed track hits #1 on the actual UK national singles chart. Not the reggae chart, the national mainstream chart. But what happens next? The industry machinery and power dynamics completely failed to support their long-term careers. It's a heartbreaking reality of an industry that treated these brilliant young women as a fleeting moment rather than investing in them as a movement.
But you know, that defiance wasn't just aimed at the music industry. It was happening right on stage. Take Steel Pulse, a second-generation Black British band from Handsworth. They released Ku Klux Klan from the album Handsworth Revolution. To force audiences to confront the ugly reality of UK racism, the band controversially wore actual Klan hoods during their performances. They operated by a really clear philosophy. If the image disturbed you, that was information about the reality they were describing. They understood that making the audience uncomfortable was exactly the point.
And then, of course, there was Peter Tosh. Equal rights was not a polite request. It was a confrontational, uncompromising requirement. Tash sang with this righteous fury, born straight from his own lived experience of surviving police brutality. He absolutely refused to soften his message to make it commercially comfortable. Now, this directness cost him in certain markets, because radio programmers didn't know what to do with him, but it cemented his legacy as a fearless voice before his tragic death in 1987.
And that brings us to Section 5, Reggae's global anthem, Crossing Over to the World.
And this brilliantly illustrates that crossover phenomenon, Dennis Brown's Money in My Pocket. On the surface, it's this bouncy, uplifting, joyful rhythm, but listen closer, and underneath, the lyrics are hiding the deep sorrow and longing of financial insecurity. Dennis Brown managed the incredibly rare feat of maintaining deep, sustained reggae credibility with the sound system crowd while achieving massive UK pop crossover success. He held both audiences in the palm of his hand because he understood that feeling where joy and sadness are so close you simply can't separate them.
Which brings us to our final case study for the class, Bob Marley. In 1978, he released Is This Love from the album Kaya. This was actually pretty controversial at the time because it shifted away from the fierce political intensity of Exodus into this pure, inward love song produced with Chris Blackwell for Island Records. But looking back, this softer approach was actually Marley's most generous act. By connecting through the heart first with a universal melody, he reached an unprecedented global audience, drawing millions of people into the wider movement just a few years before his untimely death at 36 in 1981.
When Bob Marley asked, "Is this love?" the world, literally all of it, answered yes. 1978 wasn't just the year of catchy tunes. It was a year of profound dub experimentation, deep roots reality, lovers rock innovation, and uncompromising defiance. It was a true masterclass in how music can capture the entire human experience. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. Look back at the records we covered today. Which 1978 track changed your history?